If you want to go from this to that, you need to watch this video. In this video, I'm going to go over the top 10 things that kill sharpness. Things I've learned to help me with sharper photos. I want to pass that information along to you. The number one sharpness killer is shutter speed. It's always been shutter speed. It probably always will be shutter speed. The general rule for shutter speed, minimum shutter speed is according to how long of a lens you have. If you have a 600 millimeter, your minimum shutter speed technically is 1 in 640 or 1 in 600 if your camera allows that. But that's just to account for your camera shake, for your movement. It's not accounting for a subject that's moving or windy conditions, any other outside influence that would move the camera. If you have a situation where you're trying to shoot a bird that's moving, if it's a slow moving bird, you need to increase the shutter speed, probably double to 1 in 1800 or 1 in 1600 as a minimum to freeze the motion of the animal plus make up for the camera shake. In the case that you're using a tripod, your camera's going to shake less, so you can get away with a slower shutter speed, but you still have to account for wind moving the camera, especially if you use a big lens like this one. The wind really pushes it around. Plus you have to account for the fact that the animal's moving. If you're shooting a fast moving bird, you need plenty of light. You need a high shutter speed, 1 in 3000, but you just need to make sure you have enough shutter speed to freeze the motion. Even if it's not freezing the motion of the wings, you need to freeze the motion of the eyeball or the face so that the face is clear and you get a sharper, clear face in the photo, because that's the most important part. What's really helped me with shutter speed is don't just set your shutter speed at what you think it's supposed to be and go take pictures all day. If you get into a situation where you find an animal and take a couple photos of it, push the playback button, zoom in, make sure that the photos are sharp before you continue shooting, because if you shoot a whole bunch of blurry photos, they're not going to be any good anyway. So take the time to check to see if the subject is in focus the way that you want. You don't want to just set your shutter speed overkill, because that will bring us to another subject that also kills sharpness. If you have too much shutter speed, you're gonna have to add ISO, which is you have to play this game between ISO and shutter speed in order to get a sharp photo. The second thing that will help you take sharper photos is getting a tripod. Get a nice tripod. I know it's a pain to have to carry the thing around, but when the camera is stable, it takes sharper photos. There's no question about that. I switched to a fluid head to take more videos, but you can get a nice tripod setup for probably 500 bucks. That's good heavy duty carbon fiber. If the wind is blowing, put your bag on the hook so that it stabilizes the tripod even more. The more stable you can get the camera, the better chances you have of getting a sharp photo. If you don't have a tripod, or you don't want to buy a tripod or use a tripod, then shooting technique is important. You want to make sure you have your hand further up on the lens, not necessarily at the base of the lens. You want to push the camera against your eye and hold it tightly and kind of tense up between your two arms so that you get as maximum stabilization when you're shooting. If you're panning, you want to keep your arms in tight so you have more stabilization. Try to take the jerkiness out of it. Handheld shooting is definitely more difficult. The third tip for sharpness killers is heat glaze. Heat glaze happens when the ground gets hotter than the air. The moisture and the heat from the ground rises and it creates this kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen on a hot asphalt road, you get this wavy, blurry looking heat signature that's coming off of the ground. This will cause your photos to be less sharp, especially if you're shooting long distance and you have more of that in between you and the subject. It's going to be really hard for you to get a sharp photo. So my suggestion for that would be, if it's hot, then shoot in the morning. You have probably 2 hours in the morning before you get any of that in the photo or any of that going on, because the ground is just warming up. The sun is not all the way up, it's still low on the horizon, which also makes for better photos anyway. You can also shoot later in the day, but you have a much more likely chance of getting heat glaze in your photos later in the day because the sun has been out all day. Number 4 is high ISO. So that's where I was talking about your shutter speed. You don't just want to crank it all the way up, add a whole bunch of ISO to make up for the shutter speed being so high, because you will get a sharp photo, but it'll be grainy. If you have to denoise it in post, then it makes the photo less sharp. So you want to find that balance between shutter speed and ISO to get a sharp photo. For example, if you just crank it all the way up to 1 in 5,000, if the light is not a super bright sunny day, you're going to have to probably have your ISO at 4,000 or 5,000, which is going to make the photo very grainy. Then you have to add a whole bunch of noise reduction and post. What noise reduction does is it blends the dots. So if you blend the dots, you're taking away sharpness from the photo. If you're not comfortable with manual mode, then try shooting in shutter priority. This is the TV on Canon. I'm not sure what it is on other models, but you can look it up. Shutter priority allows you to set the shutter speed at what you want. The camera makes adjustments to the ISO and the aperture based off of your shutter speed to expose the photo properly. This doesn't always nail the photo every time, but it'll give you some insight into what the shutter speed does to the ISO and the aperture, and also what the aperture and the ISO should be at when you set the shutter speed a certain way. This will help you with manual mode if you decide to use it. Just go back and look at the photos, see what the camera did to adjust for what you did, and then you'll get a baseline for what you should do if you decide to use manual mode. Number 5 is anything obstructing the autofocus. If you're shooting owls in the swamp, then you have to be careful that there's nothing in front of them, because if the autofocus can't find the eye of the owl or the face of the owl, the photo is not going to be sharp. Some portion of the owl might be sharp, but you're going to miss the most important part, which is the face. So you just want to make sure that there's nothing obstructing the animal's face, especially like a tree branch or leaves, something like that. That can cause the autofocus to focus on that, which will take away from the subject, which is not what you want. Ideal shooting conditions is a wide open field, the owl's flying around, the subject is the only thing to focus on, so the camera usually gets it right when that happens. But we all know that's not possible all the time, so just keep in mind, try to find places or angles where there's no obstructions so you can help the autofocus do its job. Number 6 is a given. Clean your lens. A dirty lens, a fingerprint on it, will cause you to have a photo that's less sharp. If there's anything on the lens, you won't necessarily see it in the photo, but it might cause some blurriness because you're shooting through that. So just check the lens before you go out shooting, periodically while you're shooting. What I do is keep one of the cloths that comes with the lens in my pocket or in my bag, so that if I get a smudge on it, I can clean it off and I don't ruin a whole bunch of pictures not even knowing it. Number 7 is a little trickier. It has to do with aperture. Some lenses shoot a sharper photo at a higher aperture. Most people will just put the aperture as low as the lens will allow. This will allow them to have more room for shutter speed, but some lenses shoot better, sharper photos at a little bit higher of an aperture. So like for example, this is an f4. I've found it shoots the sharpest photo at f5.6. What you need to do is set your camera on a tripod, put a target out there, set the timer on the shutter, take some photos with the exact same shutter speed, exact same ISO. The only thing you change is the aperture, and then look at the photos to see if which one is sharper. Mine is sharper with a little bit higher aperture. Number 8 has to do with low light. As a wildlife photographer, you're going to play this game between having enough light to shoot the animals and the animals coming out. They don't really come out most of the time in the middle of the day. They typically come out at dawn and dusk, or the first 2 hours of daylight, the last 2 hours of daylight. So if you have low light, you have to use a lower shutter speed or a higher ISO. Both of these things will cause less sharp photos. It's just one of those things. It's like live by the sword, die by the sword. You have to shoot in low light, but you have to keep in mind that the photos might not be as sharp if the light is low. Number 9 is going to have to do with light direction. Typically, if you're shooting into the sun, whether it be a portrait or an animal, you're going to have a shadow on the front of the subject, which is going to cause you to use either less shutter speed or more ISO to take that shadow off. I always try to shoot with the sun at my back, especially wildlife photography. You don't always have that option, but just keep in mind that if you want a sharper photo, try to get in a position where the sun is at your back so that the light is on the face or the front of the subject. This will allow you to lower the ISO a little bit, keep your shutter speed the same, and get a sharper photo. Number 10 is a bonus tip. If the light is too low or conditions are poor and you can't get a good sharp photo, just take video. Video is always useful. Not everybody's into video, but that's what I do. I was able to get some beautiful video footage of some elk fighting in the Tetons when I was out there last year, and the people next to me weren't able to get photos because it was too dark. You could hardly even see them. Therefore, they had to use a high ISO. The photos they got were super grainy, they didn't come out, but the video that I got is amazing. The graininess is not as bad when you are taking video, so you can get away with a higher ISO in my opinion, and that's what I typically do. If you learned anything from this video, drop me a comment and let me know. I'd love the feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys about my thoughts, and if I'm wrong on something, correct me, please. I'm still here learning just like you guys. I just thought I would share what I have found that helps me take sharper photos, and I really think my photography has come a long way. Next week will be part 1 of a 3-part series about aperture, ISO, and shutter speed, the little triangle and how they work together. This really helped me with my photography, and once I understood this, I was able to shoot in manual mode, and it really gave me an advantage when I started taking photography seriously to be able to shoot in manual mode. So that'll be coming out next week. There'll be 3 in a row, and I hope you guys tune in for that, because I think I'll be able to help you with some of that as well. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and you want to check out another one, here's one right here where I shot spoonbills at Merritt Island Wildlife Management Area, and I'll see you over there.